Hey y'all, this is Mo.
And I'm Joy.
We are lifelong friends who met in kindergarten and reconnected in Catholic school when we were 12. We are Christian women who enjoy travel, making art, cooking, baking, reading, and gardening. We do our very best to practice holistic health, and we love America. So pull up a chair and grab a hot tea, coffee, or chai latte and enjoy the show.
Today's job market is different from other times in history. Job seekers face a rapidly evolving workforce with changes in technology, generational attitudes, and even interfaces with AI. Our podcast will offer analysis, real-life examples, interviews, and discussions. We will explore solutions for the current workforce that is impacted by layoffs or just wanting to make a change. And we'll do it while having a laugh or two. Welcome to Real Talk for Today's Job Seekers podcast.
Hey, I cannot believe we are already at episode 7. Can you, Joy?
I cannot.
Jeez, it has been so interesting. That's just like top level word to experience the job search from hell. Mm-hmm. Ooh, or is saying hell like too much?
It's a little hard.
Okay, well right now I have nothing else. That job search turned into challenges, which turned into our discussions, not to mention discussions with my network, which sprouted the idea of, hey, should we do a podcast? And then, can we do a podcast? Next thing you know, we tried it.
We did. Yes, we can.
It's uncomfortable, and it's definitely been uncomfortable at times, but I'm so proud of us because we kept going, we kept pushing, and here we are realizing the initial goal we set. That feels a little bit like reinventing. What do you say?
It does feel a little bit like reinventing when you learn a new skill and you do a new thing. What I did, like in my life, and I don't really necessarily recommend it to everyone, but I kind of started over before I started reinventing. I think I thought that reinventing was going to be a simpler process than it turned out to be, but I wouldn't trade this time for anything. I've learned, I've grown, and I've become a better me. But your word for last year, focus, right? That's
Yes.
what I need a big infusion of, is focus. So everyone, just to catch you up, every year at the beginning of the year, Mo has us pick a word for the year. What was your word this year, Mo?
This year, my word of the year was thrive. And that means to grow vigorously, to flourish, to possibly gain in wealth or possessions or prosper. Finally, to progress toward or realize a goal despite or because of circumstances.
That's a great word. Why did you start doing that?
Longtime friend Lynn kind of got into that some years back, and she introduced me to the idea of doing a vision board.
Oh.
So like an actual physical kind of smallish board, maybe about the size of like a political sign in a yard.
Yes.
They kind of think of that.
Not a poster board or a...
No, that's way too big, and it's too thin. And it's, in particular, it's a foam board, so it's got, it's not flimsy.
Some structure.
Yes, and so you would put your word, and you would kind of put it together like old school scrapbook, but if you're into art or whatever types of things, and you add stickers and things that are relevant and maybe goals that you want to reach for the year that are tied to that. But then a couple of years later, shout out to one of my favorite artists, Heather Stolofson. I noticed that she started putting out a little bit more depth to the idea of a year of the word. So she started posting little art blocks that had recommendations
Mm-hmm.
for word of the year for people that were maybe struggling to come up with what that would be. And then what I really love is usually around January 1, January 2, she has an additional art piece and it has a prompt. So there's usually, I don't know, I'm guessing 10 to 12-ish lines, and it's prompts to basically encourage you to think about things that you will do to either grow in a year
Mm-hmm.
or to maybe heal from last year.
Mm.
I love the reflection.
We all need that to heal from last year.
Absolutely. Tell us a little bit about your recent words.
I remember my word last year because it turned me on my head, and my last year word was yes.
Oh.
So it was the year of yes, and it made for a very fun year, but it was also a scary year.
A whole year of yes?
The year of yes. Yes, and this year has kind of turned into a little bit of a year of yes too, because once you start yesing, you kind of continue yesing. You figure out that it's not so scary to just say yes to stuff.
Were there any bumps that you faced?
Oh, I'm sure there were bumps. And of course I was chicken about things, but but I kept going, so.
Oh, wait,
You guys-
chicken. Hold on, you just made me remember something.
Mm.
What was it? Episode 3, something like that. We talked about the monthly tech meetups, and there was a challenge for me to be your wingman.
Yes.
However, apparently the May version was not scheduled.
Right.
Okay, so are we kind of waiting to see
The
if...
June version is scheduled. However, it falls on a travel day for me. So unfortunately, we will not be able to go /
Oh.
Fortunately.
Well, this is new info because I think I followed up with you last week.
Yeah, no, I just got it 2 days ago.
Okay, well, I guess we will have to pause and look forward to July.
Yes, perhaps. Well, let's go ahead and get into the discussion today. Can I reinvent myself and start over? So in general, we have to think of a few different things, like salary needs.
That's the biggie.
Let's dive into that. So as I've taken some time off and away from corporate, I have realized that money is very expensive, and I'll guide someone wherever they think their number is to exceed that by probably 30%. Going into this, I kind of established 3 budgets for myself, a thin one, a medium one, and a quote-unquote living large, which, you know, I don't live very large, but my version of living large.
Right.
And it's been really good for me, and I've cycled in and out of each of those budgets depending on, you know, how the market's doing or how expenses are that month.
Okay.
But living on my own, I have a little bit more flexibility to do without in certain circumstances.
Okay.
What about you, Mo?
Well, I can certainly attest that money is expensive. I love that term that you had. Life is expensive and is usually different, like you said, for each one of us. And that's really because we all have different family makeups, responsibilities, necessities, goals, and I call them the like to haves.
Yes.
Because honestly, there are plenty of things I think that everyone could recognize. You might think of them as a necessity, but in fact, they're truly a nice to have. And it's
Right.
important to know that distinction, right, Joy?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So another thing in thinking through the question, can I reinvent myself and start over? Do I want to start my own business or learn a completely new skill set for a new company?
Okay.
And we kind of talked about the skill sets last time. Mo, you know this about me. I'm a serial imaginary entrepreneur in my head, but in practice, it's been really hard. Kudos to the entrepreneurs out there. I understand a little more of what you're going through. Like, I have all these ideas, and I love the idea process, the research, the business setup, the organization, the structure. The spreadsheets.
Ooh,
I am
the
a
spreadsheets.
huge fan of a good automated spreadsheet with formulas and bottom lines. Can you see that my nerd is showing? And I start to execute on some of the business ideas, and then I'll get distracted. Some of it's a legitimate distracted, like a family or
Right.
a duty. But I come up to this problem that if it's not easily resolved or makes me think that the venture would not be worth the time and effort, I just talk myself out of it.
That's normal.
Yeah, but again, God bless the entrepreneurs out there. It is much harder than it looks, especially for me. And you know how you'll go to some of those work seminars about personality types and figuring out how one works with the other and how to work with different people. I recall one that talked about the different types of business people and their proclivity towards business functions. Like there was the idea guy, the researcher, the organizer, and the executor.
Okay.
And I don't know, in the corporate environment, I was the executor. But in my private life, I've seemed to have shifted into the idea guy and the setup guy. When it comes to executing my own ideas, I'm just severely lacking. And I don't know if it's lack of confidence or lack of belief that my project will work. I don't think it's sheer laziness.
No.
But maybe like timing has been off or God has blocked whatever it is to this point. But honestly, it's been really frustrating. And in the meantime, I keep researching and learning and, to your point, developing new skill sets, not via college or traditional learning, but self-taught skills that I'm interested in. Like for me, website building right now is interesting, and film editing and graphic design, that kind of stuff. What do you think, Mo?
It is interesting for me to hear you say that in corporate you were the executor. I definitely saw myself and still see myself in the similar light. I tend to describe myself in interviews as a person who has strategy skills, but I definitely tend to prefer to execute the work with high strategy leaders. I also believe that you, Joy, have been a big idea person, strategist, if you will, like I said, to several people outside of the corporate space for as long as I can remember. Me personally, and I think there's several others who can say they feel that you definitely bring unique insight and tech skills to the table, as well as practical advice and good encouragement, which those are definitely entrepreneurial, right?
Yeah, I guess so. I haven't seen it that way, but yes, you make a good point. Mo, can you talk more about when you and Alex paused to develop his insurance business?
Oh boy, sure.
But before you start that, let's take a moment to thank our sponsor, the Florida Shield. Alex and Brett are insurance agents with the Florida Shield. They specialize in helping first responders, their families, and civilian employees. Alex and Brett bring over 52 years of first responder experience to the table, and they can help you with things like answering questions about retirements and pensions, helping you plan for the what-ifs like major injuries and illnesses, and by providing you with life and disability coverage. In addition, if you're of that age, they can also help you with that whole Medicare thing. Their goal is to provide education and support to first responders and their families. So, if you're a first responder, family member, or civilian employee, don't hesitate to reach out to Alex on Instagram under Gamo Protects. That's all one word, GAMOPROTECTS, or at thefloridashield.com.
I think I can safely say that after a majority of my career being in mortgage banking, I did stretch myself for close to 2 years to attempt to reinvent myself in the insurance market. While I remained in the financial services industry, I can personally confirm that the insurance market is quite different from mortgage banking. I found that to be true on multiple levels, from structure to pay to personalities.
Mm-hmm.
I'll add that it was absolutely a complete reinvention for my husband as well. Following his retirement from law enforcement, I was initially completely shocked when he told me he thought he would like to pursue this.
Mm.
For him, it represented a way to still be a part of his law enforcement community, but in a different way. His heart, I think, honestly, at its base, will always be blue and red, but he just didn't want to wear the uniform anymore.
Right.
You know? I, like I said, I really tried hard to assimilate into that insurance role. I think we talked about last episode the amount of study and effort that it took to get the insurance license. We both did do that, Joy.
Mm-hmm.
And at the end of the day, for me, it was just too much of a stretch,
Yeah.
to be completely honest. It was just too far outside of my comfort zone. And I decided for me, it was time to call it a day.
Mm-hmm.
Alex, however, wound up staying and developing a unique program. And I still do support him some behind the scenes, while, especially since I've been out of work, right? I've had more opportunities from a time perspective to either help out some with his social media or attend some of his academies and things like that to just provide any level of support. And we absolutely do strategize together. So that's another instance where I use that skill set, but it's outside of the corporate space. So I pick and choose where I feel comfortable in the strategy role.
Right. Right. And it's really cool, like Alex getting to continue to serve his blue family with the role that he's in.
Yeah.
And you.
Yeah, blue and red, because, for us, first responder life, both sides of our family are multi-generational. So we definitely have the heart for that, and we are still very involved in our blue and red community.
Absolutely. So we've got some real life case reviews and discussions to go into now. Do you want to work for someone else? It's more comfortable and it's less risky.
Indeed.
And there have been many times that I've looked in the face of entrepreneurship and been ready to walk away and give up and go back to working for someone else.
Mm-hmm.
But there's something in me that's begging me to try a little harder.
Yeah.
And do something and try to figure out something that's other than corporate. What about you, Mo?
Obviously, this is the most easy thing to do, right? Especially if you are risk averse, or you could possibly be in a position that you're not able to spread your wings. So the obvious answer then becomes, let me go work for someone else. That's the more comfortable way, right?
But we're trying to thrive this year.
Indeed, we are.
So what about staying in a similar role or industry is the usual go-to?
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely find myself guilty of this as I think about the course of my career. However, I think I would add here that if you are in one industry for, I'm using my finger air quotes, too long, whatever that is, you may find a reluctance from other industries to let you in. Or there's that other kind of dreaded financial impact of, hey, we can offer you this opportunity, but not at what you were used to earning.
Right.
And that becomes a real challenge if you have spent a fair amount of time in your industry and space and you've realized success on several levels, not just financial, but I think once you get to a certain place, unless you are 1,000,000% dedicated and fine with taking a significant pay cut, that feels like a giant leap backward.
Right. It's hard to do. And like the first thing that I wanted to do when I got out was go back to tech.
Yeah.
And I was thinking of providing home tech for folks. And then I realized that even though I was a good tech at the bank, I wasn't a well-rounded tech with all of the different technologies that are out there.
Mm-hmm.
And then there was this whole aspect of safety. Do I really want to go into somebody's house and crawl under their desk to plug things in and
No.
and be exposed like that?
No.
And correct. The answer was no. So that was a bad idea. And the longer that I thought about it, the more that I wanted to challenge myself not to do the same exact thing that I did in corporate, but to branch out, to challenge myself again, and to just try something different. So the next thing we would need to do is identify new skills if you're unable to stay in a similar roller industry. Mo, what are your thoughts around that?
Let's see here. For me, it makes me think of working in the business versus working in technology. Can you transition from being, say, a business analyst to a systems analyst? Can you get motivated and get your Scrum Master or PMP certified and jump from a business analyst to a project manager? And then perhaps maybe even move a little bit higher up and be a program manager. Really, what is it? If you're not able to stay in your current role, in your current industry, you have to at least have a little bit of an idea of what are you going to do and what skills do you need to define and obtain for you to take that next step forward.
Right. Identify how to get new skills and move forward.
Mm-hmm.
And I can speak to this that I've always been very interested in programming. You know, I taught myself to code HTML way back in the early days of the internets. And then I delved into Java and Python. So when people ask me if I speak other languages, I say yes, programming languages. All right, I'm being a nerd. I'm letting
Oh
nerd
my
show.
gosh. Okay, you have not given me that joke yet. So I'm like realizing this real time.
Nerd. But once you learn one, you tend to have a proclivity to learn the next one.
Okay.
And I'm sure that's true of other skill sets.
Yeah.
So I have a tendency to challenge myself to continue to learn, if not just to expose myself to some of those technologies on a continuous basis. But while at the same time I stay strong in or continue to learn new information about my soft skills.
Yeah.
So constantly reminding myself how to listen, how to communicate, how to ask questions, emotional IQ, that kind of stuff.
Oh, listen, I'm so glad that you brought up soft skills. And it is true. I think conditioning yourself to be a listener is so important.
Right.
Because a lot of people, well, let me back up. I think everyone wants to feel heard. That is a fundamental need across the board in all relationships.
And not just listening so that you get to speak and say the next thing that's on your mind.
Exactly.
But listening, asking a follow-up question.
Yeah. And
asking
truly
them to tell you more.
Yeah, truly trying to understand
Right.
where that person's at, what's going on, and I think one of the best gifts that you can give someone is to hear them.
Right.
Relate to them. let them feel that they are a valuable contributor.
And try to understand their viewpoint and where they're coming from and
Yeah.
what caused them to have the filter that they have.
That can sometimes be really challenging. And it's interesting. As soon as you said that, I just had one of my usual flashes. So we're in the season right now of graduations.
Yes.
And my son very recently graduated from high school.
Yay.
Whew. And I have attended multiple graduations over the years. High school, kindergarten, 8th grades, college, all the things. Even first responder graduations,
Yeah.
right? So been around, and they're usually so sorry, just
painful,
something to endure.
Yes.
I was very pleasantly surprised to actually be engaged and not just kind of be thinking in my mind and lollygagging around and all the things. And I never touched my phone the whole time. But the valedictorian of the class actually talked about how important it is to be able to have the different viewpoints, and that when you lose the ability to debate, what that does. And so without getting into this deep conversation, you and I could probably talk for a couple of hours on here about that, just kind of bringing it back more to the professional space. The thing is, we're all different people, and we all do come from different backgrounds and bring different thoughts and experiences. And for me, I have always, and I say it all the time, I talk about it in the interviews, and it's not just something I talk about. I live, it is very important, and you do so much better in your job when you take the time to invest in the people and to build the relationships, because you build a sense of community and trust, and you want to help people, and people generally, not always, tend to want to help you. But if you're just always got your hands out and me, that's not, to me, a very productive way of career, professional life, and success.
So what I'm hearing you say, did you see how I pivoted there?
I saw that.
Is the golden rule is very important. That whole treat others the way that you want to be treated thing is important in the workplace too.
Yeah, those soft skills.
That'll preach.
It will. Soft skills truly are important, and I think sometimes undervalued, but they're just critical.
Yes.
I'm glad you said that.
You're welcome.
Okay, so let's look at the other side. You decide that you want to branch out and start a new side hustle or new business. Maybe you have skills or dreams from your past that have not been realized, and or you possess startup skills and can possibly share the work with a trusted partner. Joy, as you know, I consider this podcast a major branch out for me.
Me too.
Okay, I thought so. Outside of this, which was quite a stretch, can you highlight a few endeavors that you have recently worked on to help others get their startups off the ground?
Why, certainly. So first, let me say that I love working with folks and brainstorming their ideas, challenging their limiting beliefs, and helping people build a clear vision for their businesses. just throwing things out there and spitballing. That's one of my favorite things to do. So one of the folks is my beloved sister-in-law, Marcia. She's got 2 ventures that I've kind of helped her with.
Mm-hmm.
She's a maker, and she has a site that focuses on quilting and other fabric arts like ice dyeing. Our main business right now is MT Site Calcs.
Mm-hmm.
So we built the website. That's her brainchild. But yeah, if you need takeoff work in the Southeast, she's your gal.
Let's continue talking about the other parts that kind of go into you wanting to branch out and possibly start a new side hustle or a new business. So, again, you would need to identify any new skills that are needed or take inventory of your existing skills that may be rusty and may need to be refreshed.
Mm-hmm.
You would need to identify how to get any new skills that you may need and how to actually move forward. So, Joy, I think you've got a couple of real life cases for us to dig into, right?
I do. So I would like to talk about Greg,
Okay.
your brother-in-law.
Mm-hmm.
Like Alex, he made a plan for what he'll be doing following retirement.
Mm-hmm.
And he's not quite retired yet. He's a first responder.
Mm-hmm.
But he's also decided that he's done wearing a uniform.
Right.
He's still interested in helping his family, his friends, his community. And following a successful career as a firefighter and a paramedic, he's decided to pursue natural medicine and has obtained his certifications to do so.
Yes.
And thus the Nature Medic was born. We may bring him on in future episodes and have him share his journey. But do you have anything to add with regards to what Greg has done?
Yeah, I would love to share a little bit about him. So I think he's had a similar path, right? Like Alex, he served the country in the military, and he went into
I don't
his
think I
next.
realized that.
Yeah, he was Navy.
Okay.
Alex was Army, and after he was done there, he decided to pursue his firefighter paramedic career. I know that he used to have a side business way back when where he taught first aid and CPR classes
Mm-hmm.
quite a bit. And once he was kind of done juggling that, I think he went on to sell it. He actually has a long time existing side hustle. He is extremely creative and crafty and artistic, and it's very interesting because he does all of this in leather. He actually does all kinds of different items for especially firefighters.
Mm-hmm.
If anyone is interested in anything like that, you can find him on Instagram at spelled out the words 911_leatherworks. He primarily focuses on leather radio holders with a strap,
Mm-hmm.
right, for the job. Actually, they're functional job items.
Yes.
Custom shields for helmets for
Mhm.
firefighters, and people come up with the most unique designs. It's
Right.
it's
I
insane.
bet.
There's all kinds of other things, but as he started to approach retirement, he also has been on a journey kind of thinking for himself and realizing certain things, and became very interested in holistic medicine as well as natural herbs.
Mm-hmm.
So he did get his certifications, and he also got his master herbalist
Yes.
certification, I believe, or designation. I'm not exactly sure.
It's
the
so
proper.
important because people
Yeah.
are calling that alternative medicine these days, but that's not alternative, it's the original medicine.
100% the original medicine, and he has taught both of us so much.
Right.
So I really value all the things that I've learned.
Mm-hmm.
And I did actually chat with him, and he agreed that he would come on to do a little bit of an interview.
Very good.
So I think that that is something that we will add to this situational podcast before we ultimately do a final wrap.
Very cool.
I love the idea of highlighting people who successfully transition and hone new skills and enjoy an entirely different thing.
Absolutely. Let's use their inspiration to spur us on to bigger and better and greater things. Speaking of bigger, better things, Mo, what about you? You've got a couple of business ideas bobbling around in there. What have you been into and thinking about?
You know, it's funny. My mind has gone all over for the past year since I knew a layoff was going to happen. I think at different points in your life, and depending on what is going on and where you're at, and even your maturity level, right? You begin to think about your future and what it should or could look like. And for me, I started thinking about my lifelong passions. And outside of many passions I have, some of the top ones have been baking and travel. Obviously, music is a big part of my life. I love flowers and artwork. So those things always have to be mixed in with everything that I do. With those things in mind, my friend Swati encouraged me multiple times to stretch myself and start an Instagram to highlight my love of travel.
Mm-hmm.
I'll never forget one of the pieces of advice that she gave. Just start it. But more importantly, she said, think of it as a bank account and add to it consistently. Over time, it will grow. Just keep being consistent.
So just like dollar cost averaging. but do it with your content, do it with your dream.
Yeah, I guess so. And now that I'm looking back on that, that might have kind of been me dipping my toe into a space that was uncomfortable. I will openly admit that I had not been an avid user of Instagram at that time. I did have a very small Instagram account that was private, and honestly, I started Instagram for a close friend who was going to college, actually my close friend's daughter, to be more specific, and that was her only social media, so I wanted to be in contact.
Yeah.
And I rarely ever used it except for with that. However, over time, I started following different people that I liked, like my artist people.
Mm-hmm.
I really enjoy seeing their creativity showcased online and watching some of their endeavors grow. Mm-hmm. And when I had to start this, I realized, I have to be public.
Ah.
This has to be a public Instagram.
So people may not like me.
And for me, I was like, oh, okay. And then it became the, all the little steps. So I did drag my feet for a few months. I know you're shocked. I reached out to my friend Lynn, who gave me the name, and then to Greg for the initial graphic, which Joy, you and I wound up modifying to what it is today. So on August 11th, 2023, Hit the Road with Mo was born. I have remained fairly consistent in my content posting, and I had to learn, sadly, a lot of Instagram skills that I never had before.
Mm-hmm.
So I had to teach myself about reels and try to figure out a balance between what I like and also consider what others may like and or connect with. I can honestly say at this point that I still definitely have a lot to learn.
Right.
But I have truly enjoyed documenting my travels in this new way. And clearly, I would love to see it grow a bit more, to have people share tips and maybe even some favorite stories. I think that would be really fun for me. I think for me, from a very early age, I've had a love of travel. It was really born from my close relationship with my grandmother. She is one of the most avid travelers that I've known. There's been a few others. And I just always loved it. And as I got older, I started mimicking some of the things, like Alex and I are currently on our quest to see all 50 states.
Mm-hmm.
And there's qualifications to be able to mark a state off or whatever. And last year, obviously, all of us doing our Ireland trip, that was really cool. And so having this has allowed me to have a new creative outlet and to engage in different ways my love of travel, which obviously I kind of incorporate my love of music.
Yes.
Through the music on the reels, and you will see tons of pictures of flowers and definitely some artwork. Let's see here. Then I would say, after a lot of pushing from you and Lynn and a few others, Moe's Micro Bakery was born, and it touches on my absolutely lifelong love of baking. Did I already tell you the story about being dressed up as a baker when we graduated from kindergarten?
I don't
Yes,
think I've
you've heard that. Yes, you have. A million times. Haha, when we graduated kindergarten, Joy, even though you still don't remember me there, we had to dress up as what we thought our career was going to be at the graduation. I was in full baker gear.
The only picture that I have of myself dressed up is I was a bumblebee.
I have been trying to talk my mom into going through the old pictures because I have pictures of you from kindergarten. I remember seeing them from my mom, but trying to get a hold of those things. Let's see how that goes. I grew up in a Southern family on both sides. Recipes are definitely life and tradition, comfort, and everything in between. For decades, honestly, I have toyed with the idea off and on about the idea of actually having a bakery. Then we had kind of thrown around the idea of a tea shop / bakery. If I'm honest, and noting that I am a risk-averse personality, and probably timing and who knows what else, I just never did it. At this stage of my life, I know I am definitely not interested in having an actual storefront, so the idea was just stagnant. Then this past December, lo and behold, I wind up learning about the concept of a micro bakery on Instagram. Most of the ones that I saw focused more on breads and some cookies, but I remember being so fascinated by the idea, and we talked about it quite a bit, right?
Yeah.
I went on to become more familiar with cottage law in my state, and after practically being pushed by several friends, including you, Joy,
You're welcome.
Moe's Micro Bakery was born, and it's definitely also been an experience and a stretch. At this time, and with the experiences I've had, it is definitely a part-time hobby for me, and I'm not sure if I want to pursue it beyond those boundaries.
But you tried it.
I did, and I'm very thankful for the experiences of learning how to price out the products, learning about packaging and labeling, deciding on what is a good item to sell versus what sounds good to me. And I can truly say that Instagram and reading all of the women's stories on that platform, and I think listening to a few solid podcasts, it really helped me to define upfront. And I think that key word is upfront, what I would do and how I would do it. That it was okay to run my bakery on my terms and my timeline. Those stories truly helped me to avoid issues that I'm almost certain I would have ran into. Instead of focusing on what was best for me and my customers, it also even helped me define my strategy and target market joy.
Right.
So I think to wrap all that, I would say Instagram and social media, with all of the negatives, right? There's truly a lot of value in a lot of the ways that people are being honest and sharing their experiences, talking about their endeavors. And if you kind of find the good ones, you can really learn a lot that will help you pursue what it is you're trying to accomplish.
Right, and it's so nice that these women mostly are not looking at you as competition. They're
Yes.
looking at you as a human.
Mm-hmm.
They're sharing their authentic experiences with you in most cases. Sometimes they're trying to upsell you, but whatever. But it is so helpful to learn from people that have gone before you. And that's important to me, like in my next position or whatever. Let me give people a hand up. Let them skip a few steps.
Yes.
That you don't have to make these mistakes. Just continue. And
I can absolutely say I personally benefited from just that.
Yes.
So Joy, you have also been outside of your space of pushing me and helping me get things going for Hit the Road with Mo and Mo's Bakery. Can you share some of the other projects that have been personal to you and your interest?
Well, as I've mentioned before, I've worked on several things, and there's a few things that kind of keep popping up or that I circle back to, as Jen Psaki would say. Choose Joy Studios is one of them. And one part of that business is for me or my collaborators to create art or photography to display and sell.
Okay.
The other portion of that would be creating classes for others to create. So this would be like canvas or fabric or wood or glass.
Okay.
But I haven't figured out if I want to do that in-person classes or if I want to do that digitally to reach a broader audience with like kits and stuff that you would mail. You know, who knows? Maybe I'll do both.
Okay.
And then I've quite enjoyed the process of podcasting. And Mo, you have been a great partner for this first venture out. We've been able to pretty easily fill in each other's gaps and thoughtfully consider the content and just like the whole process of building it and getting organized and all that. I've just really enjoyed that process. Research, development, production, publishing, engaging the audience or trying to engage the audience. You people, talk to us on Facebook or leave us a message. My gosh, do we have to beg you to do this? We know that you're listening. Leave us a message. Sorry. But we still have a lot to learn. It's been fun, but I've been thinking to myself, do I want to produce more podcasts for other people?
Okay.
So I'm bottling that idea of offering that service.
Okay.
But then also, do I want to create my own podcast? I mean, you know, that mind-mouth motion has been a glimmer in my eye for years.
Yes.
To teach people about the mind-body connection and holistic health. That you don't have to be sick and tired. You can break out of your normal cycles and have a better life. So that's constantly bobbling in my head, but I don't know. Maybe, maybe not. So, our next topic, you're in a business that is in need of people that are skilled in trades.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a big decline of people seeking work in these areas. You brought up to me one of your relatives is
Yes.
having some severe challenges with this.
Mm-hmm.
I'd love it if you shared that illustration to prove that point.
I think, and I always mention this, it just feels like so many things are different post-COVID.
Right.
And I suspect that this is another consequence. And it's just very interesting because I do have a relative who has had a very successful business for decades. And what they have been experiencing for the past year or two, probably closer to 2 years, they cannot get anyone to work. And it is crazy. And I remember being so shocked because there are very specific skill sets that are needed in any industry. But what seems to be happening, especially in the trades, so many people have allowed trade specific skills to kind of die out. And so the number of people that possess those skills are being limited. I distinctly remember having a conversation last year that there is an older gentleman who has very specific knowledge, and he has been wanting to retire. And he has attempted multiple times to find younger people to apprentice and to learn, and no one really wants to stick with it, or even worse, instead of learning the entirety of the skill, they only want to learn a fraction of the skill. So when this gentleman does retire, that means that my relative's business now would be forced to probably pay for someone out of state to complete that work.
Ooh, that's bad.
So, those things affect your bottom line.
Sure.
And again, I just go back to, I can't say enough about what Micro is trying to do to remove the stigma that somehow trades are not valuable work.
Right.
Because the truth of the matter is, trades are very critical. And I think when you and I were in school, it was common to have wood shops and other types of things.
Yes.
Which
Home ec.
when I was in school, there was none of that type of thing. There are a couple of schools in our general area that are tech focused.
Mm-hmm.
But
what about that school that you saw on Instagram that was teaching children how to farm? And
oh yeah, I think that was the concept for micro schools. So obviously that's a whole nother topic. But when you start kind of looking at education as a whole, I admit I was a former anti at-home education person.
Oh, it's scary.
What do they call that?
Homeschool.
Oh my gosh, see, there we go again. Yeah, so I actually was really not in support of homeschool until the past few years for a couple of reasons. And I started doing a little bit of digging into certain options, and I was just kind of curious. I mean, for me, I was already past the time with my own kid, but the concept of micro schools is just very fascinating to me. And actually, truth be told, a lot of people might not know this about me, but I actually originally was intending to start college as a future educator.
I didn't know that.
So I actually worked at a Montessori school for 5
I
years.
remember that. Yeah.
And it was really hard for me to mentally fully grasp. I did really enjoy all of the soft skills, very practical skills that might not necessarily be learned in the same manner today that they were, say, 100 years ago.
Right.
I think just in general, there is a great need for different venues of education and a lot more support of trades.
So one other thing your relative mentioned was he was getting a lot of folks that had unrealistic wage
Oh boy,
expectations.
indeed. Even with them actually significantly increasing the hourly wage, people just weren't coming to the table, and it tripped me out because obviously us coming from corporate America, me personally, I'm not saying it's never happened, but I've never personally experienced going to the bathroom in corporate America and seeing people camped out in there doing whatever it is they're doing, right?
No.
Whether it be sitting in the stall, on their phone, whatever those things are. I have not personally experienced that. But yes, my relative had to wind up putting in a timer in the bathroom
What?
because of unproductive employees.
Hiding.
Yeah. However, they want to bank per hour.
Right. We want you to pay us, but
Yes, it does.
we don't want to provide.
There's definitely also maybe that sense of the generational difference of dedication and perhaps in some instances, not all, just lack of motivation and drive
Right.
to show up and do the work.
Right. And that brings me back to that Montessori school that you shared. They're out on the farm, they're feeding the chickens, they're doing the things, they're selling the eggs or doing whatever they do.
Mm-hmm.
They're just touching so many pieces of it that
Yeah.
it just seems like those are going to be some rounded individuals eventually.
Yeah.
So the other thing is lost skill resources and impact.
Yeah, I think we just covered, a few examples of what it's doing to small businesses, especially in the trade space, where you've lost skilled resources, and what does that do to small businesses?
Yes.
It's huge. It's a huge impact. So, I want to circle back super quick since you were focusing on Montessori. And I just want to throw out really quick for people who might be interested in getting a better view of different concepts and thoughts related to education. I was involved with a group a couple of years back, and they are on Instagram as well as other platforms, but I'm just going to focus on Instagram. And I'd love to give a little plug for Liberation of Education. I actually learned about the concept of micro schools through them, Joy.
Mm-hmm.
And I tried to assist behind the scenes to help them get their very first conference up and going. And it was just such a learning experience for me. And I would highly recommend anyone who may have an interest in that space to check them out.
Very good. Excellent. Shout out. Well, Mo, I think we're to the end of this episode. Did you have anything else to discuss?
I think my final thoughts, honestly, if you just consider you and I in the last couple of years with your quote unquote mini retirement and then my most recent layoff, I would just like to encourage listeners to stretch themselves do the uncomfortable things, maybe focus on a hobby, learn a new skill set, and really challenge yourself to grow in new ways, because I think you and I have both learned, now that we've come out on the other side, what a positive growth experience that it can truly be.
Right. Don't be afraid to do the thing, because once you do the thing, you've done the thing, and the thing gets easier and less scary.
Agree.
Very good. So next episode, we haven't built that out yet. So we will see you on the next episode, whatever it is.
Yeah.
Thank you guys for listening. We appreciate you guys as always. And don't forget, engage us, for goodness sake. Bye, guys.
See ya.
We want to thank you for listening to the Real Talk for Today's Job Seeker podcast with Mo and Joy. If you want to advertise and connect with our many listeners around the country, please reach out to us at realtalkfortodaysjobseeker@gmail.com. If you have any show topic, join us on our Facebook page to give us any recommendations and also to find out about upcoming shows. Thanks again for listening.